loves those lights.
And
they're very cool.
Are there only 4?
Speaking of Wi-Fi light bulbs, hello everybody. Welcome.
Hello.
Good morning.
Welcome to the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. You have made the right decision for your Thursday night entertainments. Tonight, here on the American Sci-Fi Classics Track Quarantine Panel, we are going to talk about crazy, way out animated flicks from the 70s. And it seemed like, anyway, we'll get into it. But first, yeah, that's my professional introduction, everybody.
Yay.
But first, let's introduce this week's gaggle of our favorite geeks. Ladies and gentlemen, one internet to my left, my unindicted co-conspirator, Mr. Gary Mitchell.
Hello, everybody. How are you today? I am feeling very animated.
And
Oh, God.
Let's see. That's
Less than 2 minutes in.
1
Yeah,
minute
right, there it
and
is.
15 seconds. Good job, Gary.
Good job, Gary.
2 internet.
Oh, well, I have limitless potential.
All right. Okay, Denise.
See, it's what you've got to do. You got to control the room, Joe.
You do.
Gotta
You really
control
do.
the room. Denise.
Good morning. I'm Denise. And I'm here to talk about my nightmare-fueled childhood with this movie. Yay, Rankin Bass.
Oh my gosh. Indeed. 2 internets away from me. Sherman,
Hello. How are you? How's everyone tonight?
Doing good.
have you experienced extreme cold or tornadoes this week?
No, I haven't, but I have walked outside in the middle of a tornado before, which probably
Okay.
wasn't the best idea, but yeah.
Yeah, don't do that.
No.
Don't do that.
It was the
And,
90s. He had saw Twitter, saw Twister, and he was like, "This is a good idea."
It was right before the 90s, actually. It was Hurricane
Oh.
Hugo.
Oh yes.
Twister was a warning, not something to emulate.
Oh,
Exactly.
this is well before Twister, so.
Weather
And,
Channel, the movie, Twister.
So, 1 internet south of me. Welcome back. Welcome back, Shaun Rosado.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
And introducing, for the first time ever on an American Sci-Fi Classics Track Quarantine Panel,
Yes, hands.
ladies and gentlemen from the Flopcast, this is Kornflake. How are you?
Good evening. I am great. Joe, thanks for having me, and it's so awesome to meet you all. Yes, I'm Kornflake from the Flopcast. I'm at the outpost of Chicken Town with all the lobsters and my Unicorn Tears lip gloss that I thought would be appropriate for tonight. I really did it up.
Nice. And now Gary's back.
Hi, Gary. You know what? Hold on.
I'm just going to do this the whole time.
The whole time.
It'd be like the animation from the 70s where you have that one cell that they just
So true. So true.
Hey, a
So
walk cycle
how,
can go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys?
How many times did Scooby-Doo walk past that same door?
With the same bongos and playing in the background.
Okay. So, are we really going to talk about the animation sheets? Do I have to bring out my animation schoolness?
We could do that.
There.
Oh, awesome.
Let's start off with this since she's on the cover of our backdrop. Let's start off with The Last Unicorn.
Ooh, nightmare fuel.
And my favorite name for a wizard ever, Schmendrick.
Oh, no. Really? Oh.
Chandrick is with you.
Oh, really? Is that his name?
That's
Yeah.
his name.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
I know
Schmendrick
enough
is
Yiddish
his
to know
name.
what that means.
Oh, I didn't know at the time.
And we don't know the unicorn's name, but don't call her a horse.
Yeah, do not.
Right.
Do not call her a horse.
And I do have to, I do feel we have to point out that The Last Unicorn is actually a cheat for this panel because we call this the 70s animation, but The Last Unicorn actually did come out in 82.
Well,
They started animating in the 70s, though, didn't they?
Yeah. So
yeah.
Don't anybody sit here and tell me that the art
hand.
style wasn't coming directly from the 70s? I mean, you only get 70s trees animation from that era. I mean, that's just flat out.
Yeah. See,
I just know that somewhere on the internet, someone is going to be pedantic at us about it. So,
And I'm going to do this to them.
Yeah, exactly. I did not make the connection that that it came out in '82 because I just assumed it was along all the other '70s animated flicks.
Well, you gotta realize this is the same studio that put out the Lord of the Rings animated movies, and those were, if I remember correctly, those were put out in the 70s.
correct.
And if you know anything about animation studios, they all have a set style. So you can pick out Rankin Bass, you can pick out Don Bluth, and of course you have the Disney style. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to expect that this movie, it totally came out in the 70s, but no, it came out in 82.
And as Kevin Eldridge points out, were you about to say that, Joe?
Believe it or not, I was about to say that, and then Kevin Eldridge popped up in the chat room to say that same thing.
It's hot up there, Joe.
80s didn't really get started until 83.
Yeah, we're talking basically the start of He-Man. He-Man is basically the start of 80s animation. I mean, really, is when you're talking about that. So, but what that means, Joe, is we can go back to one of my favorites that got canceled because of one of your stupid shows. We can talk about Thundar. Because Thundar was...
Oh, can we?
Because Thundar was 1980. So
We're sticking with movies. We're sticking with movies.
Hey, I could talk about like a mini movie. No, they never really did a continuing episode. They were all pretty self-contained.
Yeah.
No, we got to do a Thundar the Barbarian panel again.
We can do Thundar the Barbarian panel.
We're 100% going to do that.
Yes.
But oh, that was good, Sherman. So anyway, The Last Unicorn, a Peter Beagle story, and the whole thing bonkers.
Yes.
Sure.
Well, I mean, you gotta like Peter S. Beagle. This book is one of the books that you should read. Mm-hmm. It's just all around like James and the Giant Peach. You know, they say I'm in the middle of the Dune saga, like the 4 books, not the other ones. No, that saga never ends, but the 4 books. Those, like, you have your top books, like every, I know in the Army, we have like the generals, the chiefs of staff, they'll put out all of the books on their shelves that they read. And a lot of us will follow along and read with them to understand their leadership style and everything like that. Well, the colleges do the same thing. And one of the books that you can always find on somebody's list in English or literature is Peter S. Beagle, because this book is really good and you should read it preferably before you see the movie.
Whoops.
Preferably.
Yeah, Peter S. Beagle is one hell of a storyteller.
He is.
If you ever get a chance, there was a podcast a few years ago called Writing Excuses, which was writing advice for different authors. And it had like Brandon Sanderson and some other people. And they had him on as a guest. And just him talking for an hour was just like, yeah, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, he's right up there. Like the Wizard of Oz books or the Oz books. Right. Peter S. Beagle is right up there for the commentary, for Terry Pratchett. The commentary, the social commentary, or any kind of commentary that you're looking for. Peter S. Beagle is right up there with them, and it's really genuinely one of the books that you should read at some point or listen to.
So give us the thumbnail, Denise. What's the thumbnail of the story?
Yeah, well, so, if you've seen the movie, you pretty much have the thumbnail of the story. The Last Unicorn is the last of her kind, and she goes out and tries to figure out what happened to her kind. And on the way, she meets the wizard. She gets taken in by the circus and used as a sideshow because she's a unicorn. And she meets, and forgive me, it's been so long since I've watched the movie. Like I said, it's nightmare fuel. It really was, man. She meets the one woman who says, why weren't you here with me as a child when I was younger? And so, And,
That's a scene that hits you harder the older you get.
It really, really is. And it's like, wow,
She
what
has
the hell?
breakdown.
And then through it is this bull, this Red Bull that is nightmare fuel. And
Not an energy drink.
Which is also nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not what you drink to make it through the Bunny Hutch party at Dragon Con. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an actual Red Bull. And so, I mean, if you've seen the movie, you've got the thumbnail of what the book is about. Naturally, you're going to have parts that were taken out because they won't translate into the movie story. But I mean, for the most part, the movie is pretty close to the book here and there. It really is. But again, you're going to have parts that were taken out that didn't really translate that well, that they couldn't put in there for reasons like the Lord of the Rings and things like that. But for the most part, it's pretty much spot on.
And stuff put in too, because I'm sure the book wasn't singing Anyway I Love You, and you didn't have the fine melancholy stylings of America throughout the book.
Man.
I mean,
Rankin Bass is going to Rankin Bass. Let's just
Rankin Bass.
We're going to talk about America, Horse with No Name, Muskrat Love, this movie.
Yeah.
Remember when? I mean, there aren't movies where just a band does the whole soundtrack anymore. And I miss it just because you're going all in.
Yeah, the best you can do now is if you get, Trent Reznor and Atticus together.
Yeah, that's right. You're not going to get usually probably for the last few decades, like one singer will do one song on a thing, but you're not going to get anybody doing the whole soundtrack.
Wasn't Queen the last one?
And everything. So yeah,
wasn't Queen the last one that one artist just did the whole track for a movie?
David Byrne did The Last Emperor.
Oh, did he?
Still.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, you're going to have to go through your Disney movies. There might be some more recent ones.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I got to say, America.
Thank you, Randy Newman.
Randy Newman.
Oh, that's a good one. Daft Punk did all of Tron Legacy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They did.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep, that's right.
It doesn't
they
happen
did.
often, though.
Yeah, James, let StreamYard know your name, because right now you're just Facebook user.
Yes.
I am Facebook user.
Yes.
But this was
that's one of the things is it's a whole different panel, but one of the things they're doing a sequel to Tron? Really? Daft Punk's doing the music. Everyone went, okay, I'm in.
I mean, I was in before that, but give me any excuse to go watch Tron. If Daft Punk gets you in the door to watch Tron, I'm there for it.
Right.
But going back to Last Unicorn, though, the thing I always took away as a kid from this that it really influenced me as I was growing up is I always like to say his name wrong. I like to call him Schmegma because he really is.
Oh, that's even worse.
Don't say that.
And we all know what. If you don't know what that is, that's a whole other thing. But he's
This is a Red Dwarf.
Well, hey, that's a pretty benign word, all things said. But the wizard, we'll call him the wizard. The wizard basically tainting the unicorn with mortality and regret and giving her human feels when she basically lived a life of perfection and happiness. And then he's like, yeah, that was my bad. I gotta go. Bye. I mean, and the whole point was the wizard was kind of like, the way I interpreted it as a kid was it was always the wizard was just kind of pissed off that this unicorn was better than him. So he wanted to bring the unicorn down to his level.
A wizard should know better.
Yeah, seriously, and you get to the end of that, and then the wizard's like, "Oh yeah, I totally screwed that up. My bad." And as a kid, it always kind of taught me, look, just because you think you might know something a little bit more, than somebody else, doesn't mean you have to rub their nose in it and drag them down to the muck and make them feel like crap because they don't necessarily know something. And it really stuck with me as a kid because I was like, I don't want to be like the wizard, as I have named him.
Mendrick.
I hate that. No, I always called him something else. But I hate that. I hate that wizard. Oh,
yeah, trying all those magic spells on the cage that she's in, and then he's like, "Oh, actually, I have the keys."
Right.
He was always such a prick in the movie. I never understood anybody being sympathetic toward him. I was like, no,
right.
He's a jerk. And he did, because he was pissed off. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember, did he want immortality or did he have it and he was trying to get rid of it?
He just wanted to be magic. He wanted his magic to work.
That's right. I think in the book he wanted immortality, or he had immortality and was trying to get rid of it, or something like that.
Yeah, it was more magic. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like he was trying to punish everybody else for something that he couldn't have. And then the poor unicorn, she bore the brunt of his punishment. Because she was in this happy state of perfection. She was a unicorn. She was this magical being. And then he had to go in and screw everything up. All she wanted to do was find out what happened to everybody else.
He kind of screwed things up, but the butterfly didn't really help.
No.
That butterfly is something in that film. That's I feel like I don't know if I should have watched The Last Unicorn sober, because I don't think that butterfly was meant for a non-drug fueled audience.
Well, let's face it, a lot of 70s animated films are designed for a not exactly sober audience.
An altered audience.
Yeah.
An altered audience.
In the 70s, mind-altering substances were just in the atmosphere. You could just... Yeah.
Before fluoride was put in the water for your teeth. Well,
buddy.
That is 100% true. I can confirm that.
But seriously, like The Last Unicorn, and I've only watched it about, let me think. I've watched it about once a decade. I'm 42, so I'm due like in the next 8 years to watch it again. But I only watch about once every 10 years or so.
Like an immunization.
It's a bit of a downer.
Yeah, it is. And you know what it is? There's a great line from Scrubs that I just learned like this last year, which is people are bastards covered in bastard coating. And basically that's the unicorn. Like The Last Unicorn is basically the unicorn learning that people are just bastards and bastard coding. That's all they are. Like everything. The bull, the wizard, that stupid butterfly, everybody is a bastard in this movie.
And even the woman that gets so mad at her for never coming to her.
I grew.
Yeah, when she was young, it's like, wow, y'all are kind of taking out your problems on this poor unicorn. Like, she didn't ask for any of this.
She's the last one.
Right.
Give her a break.
Molly Greer was
this was a Ridley Scott movie.
All about her.
This is a Ridley Scott movie. Tom Cruise would be trying to save her life, and you'd have Tangerine Dream playing upswelling music and stuff. In this movie, they're just like, beat her down.
I think that's why this movie has stuck with me for so long as a kid, because it's never the happy movies that stick with you, right? It's always the downers for God knows whatever reason. But this one, and I think it was Little Nemo. I think it was that Japanese animated movie that came out, I think, round about the same time. I watched them concurrently. Do not do that. Do not do that.
Well, and I think it sticks because it is a bit of a downer, but it's a movie that needs to be a downer because of the lessons it's trying to teach you.
Yeah.
I mean, these are not happy lessons.
Yeah, but as a kid, you don't really understand that, unless you have an adult there sitting there and explaining it to you, kind of like friggin' Les Miserables or any of Shakespeare. Look, I stopped reading Les Miserables right about when they started talking about the priest, and he went on for 12 chapters. Oh my God. No, I was done. I read the Cliff Notes. I was done. Couldn't do it no more.
But the adult that's with you has to understand what's going on. And this is where I ran into a problem where I saw this as a kid. They took our entire summer, like our day summer camp, which is basically glorified daycare, marched us down to the library where they were playing The Last Unicorn on VHS. And we all piled into the library and everybody thought, oh, how great, a cartoon for the kids to watch. And the adults were not in the know. And this, getting ready for this panel, is when I discovered I've never seen this whole movie. Like before last night, I thought I had, but when the harpy flies down and takes out Mama Fortuna is when they actually herded us all out of the library and said, hey kids, you want to go outside and play? And that's what I thought the whole movie was, because the adults didn't know what we were getting into. So those initial strains of that song from America have been stuck in my head for years. But, when you hear lyrics like the last crumbling fountain and it seems like the world is dying and would leave the world to mourn, it's like, well, okay, now I know I'm in for a good time. But
yeah, it's that same group of parents who go, Watership Down. It's about bunnies. It'll be fine for the kids.
You want to see a movie about Transformers, don't you?
Can we talk about the perversity of making Watership Down? Like, look, I know it's a book and I know it's for kids and I had to read it, but damn it, you made it look like Charlotte's Web, man. Like, no.
So I read the book. I actually listened.
So let's just finish up with Last Unicorn.
Oh,
and
sorry.
Then,
I'm sorry. Did we leave something on the table? Did we leave some sadness on the table there? Like,
we're putting a pin in the rabbit. We're coming back to the rabbit. We'll talk about the rabbit. We'll tell you about the rabbit.
So not Watership Down. Oh my God. The Last Unicorn. So for me, this movie I think was traumatic, not just because of the harpy scene, which scared the absolute bejesus out of me as a kid. And I'm watching this on VHS, and I think I'm in Jordan when I'm watching this. It was the Red Bull that scared the absolute bejesus out of me. And I can remember being terrified, but being so sad at the same time. And I think the worst part was when the unicorn, she was in her human form and she was in the castle and something was going to happen to her. And she was just so irreconcilably sad. And it was because she didn't remember she was a unicorn. That's what it was. She didn't remember she was a unicorn. And she was so sad. And the bull was coming after her. And all of her sisters were following behind. And I was just like, no, I can't do this no more. No.
You mean you weren't scared by the dragon who speaks 17 languages badly and is prone to gout?
So for me, that was almost like the comedic break in the movie, as much of a comedic break as it could be in that movie. But it was the rest, and it was that ending part and how the bull was coming after her and her sisters were there and she couldn't remember that she was a unicorn and they wanted her to remember, and I'm like, this sucks so bad.
And never mind, Prince Lear is taken out trying to help her too. So Prince Lear is face down in the sand, not moving, no life signs.
It's the worst.
And I didn't remember a lot of the details about it until I rewatched it. I'm like, why is the prince dead? What is?
No happy ending.
You can't have any happiness in this movie, Joe.
Nope.
There's no happiness allowed.
No.
Y'all are completely putting me off this movie. I haven't seen it all the way through yet. So,
so you don't know the ending.
Sherman, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, Sherman.
I had enough trauma in my childhood. That wouldn't have hurt anything.
Lear is okay. The unicorn comes along and fixes Prince Lear with her horn. So all is well.
Yeah.
Kind of. Actually, not all is well. Never mind. Forget what I said. All is well.
Read the book.
Yeah, and we kind of have to give it up to this cast though, because it's amazing who all they managed to get. We got Mia Farrow, Alan Arkin, Jeff Bridges, Robert Klein, Angela Lansbury, and then Chris Lee. I mean, oh my God, Christopher Lee. Who apparently showed up for the recording of his dialogue with a copy of the book that he'd hand marked with this line has to be in the movie. This line has to be in the movie.
Like he did on Lord of the Rings. Okay,
yes.
I see.
And who says no to Christopher Lee? No one says no to Christopher Lee.
Nobody with
especially
brains.
not in the 70s because he was Dracula at the time. So all he's got to do is so.
And he killed guys too, so there was that.
He killed Nazis. Well, I don't know. Did everybody know that he killed Nazis in World War II at that point?
They didn't. No,
they didn't.
I don't know if they.
Yeah, I don't think it came out until like the 80s or 90s. I think.
Yeah, when they declassified some stuff. I don't know if it had come out.
Yeah.
I don't think it actually came out until Peter Jackson said so in his movies.
I think that's the only time it ever came out that Christopher Lee actually killed Nazis back in the war.
Yeah.
Spy master, friend of Tolkien. He knows what line he's going to say, and you're going to let him. He's Dracula. Yeah, I mean,
he sang death metal album in his 90s.
Oh, and that
about Charlemagne.
His Christmas album too. Excellent. So Gary, you said you had a list. What's next?
All right, so let's go back to the rabbits.
Yeah, please.
and we'll talk about Watership Down.
Please.
So I did not listen. I have Audible because that's all I have time for these days, unfortunately, is to listen to books. Unless I can carve out a huge chunk of time to just sit on my bed and read. So I actually listened to Watership Down not too long ago. I'm in my 30s, and this is the first time I ever listened to it. And I had seen the movie, and it was like, oh dear Jesus, what is going on? Why? And then I listened to the book, and I was like, oh my God, what were they telling their British children?
Well, you see, the British are known for being such a happy, jovial people.
I know. It's a great book. It's just like, wow. And you told this story to your kids, huh?
Let's tell you, hey, you know that field over there full of rabbits? Let's kill them all.
Yeah. And it's so funny because he sits there. He's like Tolkien, the writer of Watership Down. He sits there in the foreword that he gives to the book, and it says, "Yeah, there's no parable here. It's just a story that I would tell my children to entertain them while we were on long car rides." And they told me to write it down and turn it into a book, so I did. He's like, "But there's no parable there."
Daddy, tell us the story where they all suffocate and die.
Right?
Yeah, what
Tell
is
us the part
that?
where you put them in the gas chamber and they see dead brethren down there with them. Can you show us that part, please? You know, can you tell us the part again where the main character dies and goes off the black rabbit at the end? Because that made me feel really nice when I'm 7. You know,
That's when you know you're in for a good time.
I mean, seriously. I mean, honest to God, the modern equivalent of this, if you've never seen Watership Down, are those damn little 5-page web comics that they released where Death goes to save an animal.
Oh my God!
You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
That's the modern equivalent of Watership Down. Every single time.
Oh God!
No. Do a double feature of. You do a double feature Watership Down and Graveyard of the Fireflies. You'll have a great night.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that was a fun time. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, Graveyard of the Fireflies. Dear Lord, let's talk nuclear war. Let's take nuclear war extremely seriously in an anime, and let's just deal with the psychological trauma of the entire freaking continent or island of Japan, and say, hey, we're a little messed up over the bomb.
I mean, I feel like Godzilla was much better for that. At least, you know, at least there was a giant monster and it wasn't so depressing.
Right.
And yet the trauma was a little bit difficult to prepare for. I mean, just like going back to The Last Unicorn for a second, at the beginning of the movie, it flashes up on the screen that the movie is rated G for, get this, foul language and violence.
What?
Wait.
Well, with a character's name like Schmendrick.
Foul language.
I didn't say it. No, we're all thinking it, but I didn't say it.
I just, you know, and you got to wonder because I mean, animation studios get away with a lot. Have you seen Animaniacs as an adult?
Oh yeah.
Well, did you see the tree in the movie? The tree that becomes animated?
Right.
That Schmendrick is tied to?
With his giant sack of
Yeah.
Oh, she loves him.
It makes you wonder, like Rankin
it
and
was
Bass.
the one happy moment in the movie. Like,
Well, sticking with Rankin and sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just sticking with Rankin and Bass, though. We have to go with one of the other, 800-pound gorillas in the room, The Lord of the Rings by Rankin and Bass, where they tried to adapt the books. And I still remember being a kid, grabbing it in the video store and taking it home and watching it. And it gets to the end and it says to be continued. And I'm like, what?
Come on!
And just, I rented that movie 3 times, each time hoping that I'd grab the right copy that had the whole movie.
Oh, man.
yeah. I don't know what Rankin Bass thought they were trying to pull off on that one. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to be contentious. I am going to sit and say wholeheartedly that Peter Jackson did right by cutting Tom Bombadil out of the movie.
Yes.
And it's because if you read the books, he and God love J.R.R. Tolkien, but he never won the Nobel Prize for literature because they told him he couldn't write. Go figure, right? What do they know? But Tom Bombadil, even in the book, slows it down. And in the animation slows down. So I feel like Peter Jackson did the right thing where Rankin and Bass is like, nope, we're going to straight up
the whole thing.
The whole thing. And it's like, maybe not. And I never actually, and so Rankin and Bass is not my favorite animation studio coming out of the 70s and the 80s. I'm a Don Bluth person. I love Don Bluth. I loved him in school. He's my animation hero. I was not personally fond of the Rankin and Bass Lord of the Rings when I went back and watched it. And of course I watched it after, owning the Peter Jackson version of it, but just to see what it was, because I missed out on it. And I got to tell you, it's not my favorite version. Just everything from the animation, ignoring the story, because they just straight up did a full on, we're going to do this thing no matter what. But even the animation, I was just like, you know what? Oh. Good on them for doing it. But it was not my favorite thing.
All right. Kevin Eldridge actually has corrected me. Kornflake, I need you to hit him later.
Hit him with a lobster.
Yes. But yeah, it was Baskey who did Lord of the Rings.
Actually, yes.
Baskey. Got it.
Yeah. But Rankin and Bass did Hobbit and Return of the King, which...
Yes.
Yep.
Return of the King is great because we get the great musical singing orc sequence of, I don't want to go to war today.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. And I'm like, oh, Lord.
Oh, boy.
You have nice manners for a thief and a liar.
Yes. Now, The Hobbit, their adaptation of The Hobbit is beautiful.
It is. It is beautiful. It is a very pretty movie.
And as much as, Peter Jackson got Lord of the Rings right, I think they nailed The Hobbit.
I think they did too.
And as much as I love Crickleback Cumberbund, Powers Booth's Smog is just better.
Richard Boone.
Yeah.
Richard Boone, sorry.
Yeah, Richard Boone, yeah.
So I tell people all the time, the Hobbit trilogy, Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy, for me is an exercise in color theory. I will watch those movies just to see how the art director does color theory, because it's beautiful. It's amazing. And I love Smaug. He was over 4 million polygons rendered, and he's glorious. Mm-hmm. But Rankin and Bass did it better.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not saying they're bad movies. I'm not saying they're bad movies at all. I'm just saying that I like it should have been 2 movies. But that's a whole other panel on a whole other track.
So I'm going to be the one that disagrees on that one. I really like the Jackson Hobbits, but we're not here to talk about that one. We're here to talk about the other Hobbit. And the one thing I always loved about the original Hobbit is I love there's this one moment, and it's so ridiculous. Right as the armies that are fighting realize they're about to just get completely hosed by the orcs, and the King of the Elves, because they don't name him in the they don't name him in the Rankin Bass, or he goes up and he starts talking to Thorin, and he's like, "I've always loved you like a brother," and he's like, "Please help us." And there's this
my dearest friend,
my dearest friend. Like, they know they are about to just get destroyed, and they're like, "Please don't let us die." And they all start like basically kissing each other's butts. I don't know why it always cracked me up as a kid, because it's so disingenuous. Like, even the delivery of the actors and the animation, it's so disingenuous. It's, I don't want to die. I'll say whatever it takes to get you to help me right now.
You were not wrong.
I love that. I wish we had a moment like that in the Peter Jackson movies. I really did. I would have loved for what was his name? The guy who played the King of Elves, Lee Pace.
Yeah, Lee Pace.
Yeah, Lee Pace.
I think you're right.
Yes.
Yeah, Lee Pace. I would have loved Lee Pace to just like grab Thorin. Please, I've always loved you like a.
See Thranduil just sit there. Come on, man.
Right, just Thranduil just getting totally in his face. Like, come on, man. Forget those stupid sparkly stones. Like, just.
We are going to die.
We are going to die. There are no evils in the plot left. Like, just. It would have been so much fun to see that happen.
That would have been fun.
Yeah, but but it's not only is it beautifully animated, but the voice acting again there as well. John Huston is Gandalf. Mm-hmm. I love the scene against the trolls where Gandalf whips out Glam. I can never say it right.
Glamdring.
Yeah, Glamdring, and just goes to town. Mm. And their Gollum is creepy AF.
Oh my gosh,
Brother Theodore.
That was the hardest thing for me going into the Peter Jackson movies, was the fact that Gollum didn't look like a reptile. Mm-hmm. It took me a while to get used to it, because I would see him, I'm like, all right, I mean, it's really cool, but like, I wanted the big giant frog eyes. I wanted them to kind of hunch over. I wanted them to have the fingers. Yeah, like
and me, I've got The Hobbit read by Anthony Serkis, and when he goes into Gollum, I'm like, "Ee, Gollum!"
yeah, and again, like don't get me
Wow.
wrong, Andy Serkis completely won me over by the end of the Two Towers, but going into it, I was just like, I was so used to it being a certain way in my head, and then of course the animation just took a while for me to downshift into this modern realization of him. And again, I absolutely love the new version of Gollum. Well, new. But I like the modern version of Gollum. I think it's an excellent choice, and I think anybody who ever tries to remake Lord of the Rings after that is just going to have a tremendously difficult time.
I mean, I don't know as though it can actually be done, but I think the wonderful thing I think about animation, and again, I went to school for animation. I can't say I'm an animator because I don't work in the industry, sadly. But the great thing about animation is, and especially the older animation, not so much the new stuff, because it's all computer and whatnot. And I'm not saying that it isn't done with love, because it most definitely is. But the great thing about the older movies is that it really is, and you can see the work that's put into the movies. And I mean, the only thing for me that really comes close nowadays is Cartoon Saloon, and they just put out the Irish animation studio. They just put out Wolfwalkers, and if you haven't watched Wolfwalkers, you really should. It's on Apple TV, and it's beautifully animated, and they always do such great jobs. But it's that kind of love that I feel like you might not necessarily feel like you get these days, and a lot of times I feel like it's because they're just trying to put something out there because of whether it's money grubbing or hey, we have this really great idea and things like that. But movies like this back in the days of Rankin Bass and Don Bluth Studios, you had to take your time with these things. It's not like you could just whip them out and say, yeah, let's put out a movie. Crap takes time.
Unless you were a TV studio cranking out with, like we were talking about, I think a little bit either before or just as we started, where you had Hanna-Barbera recycling those backgrounds. I mean, that's the whole reason. Again, this is a whole other panel, but the whole reason Hanna-Barbera became the TV animation giants is they figured out how to shortcut and get to things. But for a movie, you really can't get away with it. Although they did try. Like Vasky loved his rotoscoping.
Oh yes.
So rotoscoping. The funny thing about rotoscoping is it's actually pretty great, and it's one of the whole reasons why Ghostbusters still holds up today. They rotoscoped a lot of their effects, and it still holds up. And it's the one reason why Snow White is the only Disney princess who is in proportion.
Mm-hmm.
Only reason why.
What?
Yeah, they actually did a lot of rotoscoping. Yeah.
Yep, they sat there and they shot the movie live action. And when they went back, they rotoscoped her. They just, every single frame, they traced her. And she is the only Disney princess who is in proportion next to Moana. And Moana is actually good proportions for a Disney princess. But Snow White is the only one in proportion.
Yeah, and it's funny because they also did that with the dwarves too. So like when you see Doc dancing around, they actually had these giant pot-bellied men who would do these dances, and they'd kind of do this thing with their shoulders.
I'm sorry, Shaun.
It's okay. I was going to say one thing that I thought was interesting though is that we talk about the love and the artistry of the 70s. When I was in art school, Don Bluth actually came to talk to our school, and we got a chance to ask him. I don't name drop this a lot anymore because my wife gives me shit about poop about it. But yeah, I went to Savannah College of Art Design in the late 90s, early 2000s, and so we got basically everybody to come in at that time because the animation departments were booming. So when I went through their animation program, there was a lot of really cool people that came in, and one of them was Don Bluth, and he came and talked to us about how basically a lot of people like to. And I don't want to say this because I don't want to make Denise feel bad. As far as like, I don't want to break a rose-colored window, but
no.
Talk about the 70s as far as like how much the care went into it, and Bluth is very much like that's the reason why he left all of the he left all of those different animation houses was because they didn't. It was a workload. It was you got to put out 1 minute's worth of animation by X day, and if you don't, like this, they did love what they do, but they were trying so hard to hit deadlines. And so that's why you get all those weird mistakes and stuff. And it's funny because when you talk, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, actually, did he pass already or no? I haven't done any.
Don Bluth?
Yeah, Don Bluth. He's still
No,
alive.
Don Bluth is still around. He has an animation school.
That's what I thought. Yeah, like I was like, I know he's in his 80s now, but he's still around. Yeah. But if you ever get a chance to talk with him, he loves talking about his time, especially in the animation houses. But he really talks about the fact that was one of the reasons why he broke away and started doing things like Secret and M and whatnot, because he wanted to really bring artists who loved the craft together, and they weren't focused on deadlines, which of course is what got Bluth in trouble later on, because they would miss deadline after deadline and
right.
money. But it's
and
a
missing
really
deadlines costs money, and how
and that's the thing. And you know, you talk, and Shaun is right. It's not like it's like all these rose-colored glasses and all that. It's not.
Right.
You know, when I was in school, they basically made you feel like you were part of a pipeline, and that's what made me absolutely hate computer animation, because you're a cog. That's all you're doing, and you're doing this one thing. And I tell people all the time, you know, they have people within studios whose sole job is to do the lighting on this specific thing. And it's like, oh, well, that's dumb. No, you do not understand. You do not understand what kind of pressure these people are put into. And you have to have all of those little things, because if you don't, you ain't going to get the movie made. Mm-hmm. And, you know, even for me, I'm working on a project that is forcing me to do, or not forcing me, I won't say that because that's horrible, but I'm doing a little bit of animation for, and I had to be very specific with these guys. I was like, look, unless you got 3 years and $15,000 to spend on this one person, you're not going to get a lot of animation, because it takes time. There are second and third order effects that you're not thinking about, because you don't have to think about them. And when you're in there, and that's why Hanna-Barbera, to piggyback off of what Gary said, that's why Hanna-Barbera figured out how to cheat. And there's a way, that you can tell how the cheat will go. The body will stay, but the image will move, or the background will move and the body will stay, or something will move, or something within the background will suddenly get a little bit different, and that thing is going to move. Those are the cheats, and that's why it looks, for lack of a better word, cheap.
And that is why Captain Caveman is the greatest cartoon on
one single frame flying through the sky.
At least it's on clutch cargo.
So, Gary, what's next on our list?
All right, so the next segue is going to be a shout out to Craig Isley, who brought it up in the chat. Wizards, since we'll stick with Mr. Bashki.
Talk about a movie that you think is for kids. And like, my parents showed me those. My parents showed me that way too young. They thought it was going to be, Last Unicorn, Watership Down. They didn't realize it was essentially one cousin away from like Rock and Rule, and Star Chaser, The Legend of Ord, and stuff.
Wizards is, again, it's got some amazing funny sequences, like Fritz, they killed Fritz. That became a geek meme before memes were a thing. I mean, you could go to any geek gathering and yell, "They killed Fritz," and that routine would break out.
Right.
But then, and again, it's got one of the best endings in a fantasy movie. One last thing. I'm glad you changed your last name, you son of a. And pulls out a pistol.
I have never seen this movie.
You've never seen Wizards?
No.
Me neither.
Okay, so Wizards has like one of the greatest posters of all time, which is they have the red bounty hunter on this weird. It's like it looks like a testicle with like a donkey head on it. It's a very weird steed that he runs on. It only has 2 legs, and it says Wizards. Google it. I'm not even kidding.
It was the 70s.
And in a very 70s font, it says Wizard. And the thing that I always thought was so funny is it says an epic fantasy between magic and peace, or something like that. And so you think it's going to be like this super peaceful kind of like rah, we're all in it together kind of movie.
Not with that.
And magic.
Basic plot is it's post-apocalypse, and there are these 2 wizards that are brothers. One's good and one's a pothead, basically. And the evil wizard finds a way involving Nazis to try to take over the world.
Oh my God!
So his brother has to stop him.
I'm gonna watch this movie now.
It's amazing.
It's really good. It's really weird. I mean, it's 77, and Bashki is in his full Bashkiness, but it's got Mark Hamill. It's got
oh God! Now I gotta watch it.
Oh yeah.
I love. Apparently, Ralph Bakshi, and I think books have been written, and I want to read them now that I think about it. But dude was a genius, and even going into the early '80s, his Mighty Mouse cartoon was
Mighty
so
Mouse.
good. But yeah, Wizards is. I debated whether, since technically we put the word fantasy in the title, maybe, but it's the same thing.
There's magic.
Yeah, and it's so of its era.
Yes.
It's bonkers, like the other things that we have talked about.
Well,
And-
I mean, like, what, I'm sorry, Joe. I apologize.
Well, no, I think that was my point, but it was all these movies that we're talking about. None of them are cookie cutter movies. None of them stuck to an outline. Well, these are the kind of animated flicks you have to make.
Yes.
All of them.
Formula wasn't really set yet, was it? It wasn't.
No.
It wasn't set.
Yeah.
Disney did not get its tenterhooks into the consciousness, the collective consciousness, and say, "This is how, this is what people respond to."
Well, this
Yeah,
is the
that's
dark
kind
age
of what
Disney,
we
though.
wanted. Yeah, that's kind of one of the things we wanted to talk about in this panel, is the fact that in by the 70s, Disney, Disney, people forget Disney started out as a very weak company,
Right.
and it took a long time for them to become the behemoth. But by the 70s, that's pretty much where they'd hit. At this point, by the 70s, Disney was the Disney as we really started to think of modern Disney. Everything was coming out. They were starting to do the re-releases. I mean, the Aristocats came out in the 70s. The Rescuers, some other ones.
Oh, I love the rest.
And
The one that I always like to bring up that, because it was actually one of their few successes, especially animation wise, but it was also live action, was Pete's Dragon.
yes,
Oh,
Which
yeah.
was a Don Bluth joint too. So that was
Mhm.
like his
I'm
last
glad
big
you
project.
brought up Pete's Dragon, or else I would have.
Yeah.
So,
we
but
can-
in the 70s, it becomes such a monolith, and it created such a cadre of animators who were tired of being constrained, and didn't want to be in the Disney formula and just adapting, fairy tales and all this. And so we have Bashki, we have Bluth, who break out to do their own thing. And so we get, there's like, I want to tell a story that's more mature. I want to tell a story that's not aimed specifically at kids, or I want to do something that looks like, hi kids, here's what acid's like.
Didn't
Well,
Tim Burton start out as an animator
Yeah.
at Disney?
Fox and
He
the
did.
Hound.
he did. Yeah, he hated animation, or he hated 2D animation because it was just, he was Fox and the Hound, and I think he was working on Beauty and the
Joe's
Beast.
losing it.
And he hated it, so he broke away from Disney and he started Skellington Studios, and that's when we got The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I have to tell you is it's so funny because Henry Selick was in there with him, and it's more due to Henry Selick's art direction that you really get the flavor of The Nightmare Before Christmas than it is Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, people always give, and I mean, we're way off chronologically right now. Like, we're way out of the 70s, but it really is. I mean, when you look at what happened, Selick deserves way more credit for Nightmare Before Christmas. Tim Burton did some really great drawings, did some fantastic drawings, and had the juice to get that movie made. But it really isn't his project. And he even says so. He's like, I'm not really the guy who made this movie. I made some drawings, I came up with the plot, but this guy was the one who really took those drawings and said, let's make it something
And if
special.
you look at Coraline,
I love Coraline.
there you go. God, I love that movie. I hate the book, but I love the movie. Anyway.
Really though, while Gary, as you said, Disney was still in its in the early stages, but a lot of those Disney movies from the 70s, those count. Those are really good.
Yeah, what's funny is
what a lot of people, me included, consider the best Robin Hood movie is.
Oh my God!
Robin
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, that movie is the best.
I had not seen it in years and years, and then I showed it to my kiddo when she was younger because we were on a Disney fixation, and we still are now that we can watch everything on Disney Plus.
Right.
But I've not
not?
seen Robin Hood again for like decades. But now it's one of my favorite movies. That movie is great.
Ooh da lally.
To me, the movies, the hand-drawn animated movies that Disney did in the 70s and the 80s, the early 80s, were the best Disney flicks. Nowadays, for me, and this is my personal opinion, now this is accepting that new movie that's coming out, that Raya with Awkwafina as the dragon. Oh my God, right. Awkwafina as the dragon. I am here for this. I love Awkwafina. But to me, after Robin Hood and The Jungle Book, which I will never forgive Disney for redoing that movie ever, but after The Jungle Book, that's when Disney kind of went a little bit down, excepting for Fantasia. For me, that's when Disney just started becoming formulaic and they just started pushing out the cookie cutter movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's the Eisner era, and again, that's a whole other
whole thing.
Well, I mean, what we're really dancing around here is we're dancing around the fact that this was, and any animator will tell you. I know Denise, we've both been talking about this when we danced around. It is literally called the Dark Age of Disney. And that's the reason why it's called the Dark Age of Disney, is because essentially it's not quite exactly 1970, because 1970 was the Aristocats. So it really is right after Robin Hood. Robin Hood is kind of like the delineation point. The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is in this one, which everybody forgets about. They forget that this one came out in I think it's 74.
Speaking of soul-crushing sadness, The Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Oh God!
Oh my!
But you have Rescuers, you have Fox and the Hound, and then it even goes into the Black Cauldron.
I
and
love
the Great
that
Mouse,
movie.
Right?
I
and
love
then
that movie.
And the Great Mouse Detective, which is basically the thing that between Black Cauldron and the Great Mouse Detective, those two movies almost killed Disney as an animation studio.
It did, and it was The Little Mermaid. It was The Little Mermaid that brought them back.
Yeah. A lot of people give it to Little Mermaid, but actually Oliver and Company is what started it to come back.
Was it Oliver?
Oliver and Company did The Little Mermaid.
It wasn't Rescuers Down Under?
Yeah. No, it wasn't Rescuers Down Under. Rescuers Down Under was later.
Yeah, Rescuers Down Under. Yeah, but
again,
I'm sorry, we're in a Disney hole now. I'm sorry.
Why are we doing it? Why are we in the Disney hole? Don't go to the Disney hole.
Sorry.
How are we going to get out of a Disney hole?
How can we get out of a Disney hole?
Let's go with, this is one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen. It's French. Fantastic Planet.
I saw that as a
fantasy. It's a sci-fi, but it's.
I first saw that as an adult.
Star. Yes.
I'm confused. I don't
go,
think
Sherman.
I've heard of this movie.
Go, Sherman. You've seen it. Talk about it.
Yeah, that was the animation. It made everybody look like they had jaundice or some kind of metabolic disease, because their eyes were sort of bulging out and their skin was sallow and everything. I'm at odds to actually describe it. I just know that. Well, that was a thing I saw. I don't know.
It's very French. It does not care if you follow along with the story. It's mainly focusing on the visuals, and it's about a world where these giant blue people with these weird fish-like ears are oppressing little tiny people, and there's a revolution. And it's just... It was the 70s. There was a lot of drugs.
I feel like there's a lot going on.
There's a lot happening. I just remember, all the 70s. I sum up. All I remember about the 70s is I was very sweaty, and that's only because I remember one time my mom told my daughter. She said, your dad was a sweaty baby. And so now all I can think about when I was a youth was how sweaty I was, apparently. But there was no air conditioning back then, and it was the polyester, according to our friend in the chat room. But before we get out of here, I do want to talk about Pete's Dragon, Kornflake.
Yes.
Ooh, Pete's Dragon.
Awesome. Yeah, the story of this mischievous dragon is something that it's still fun for me to go back and watch now and again. I remember enjoying it because a lot of the animation that I was watching when I was very little was pretty. I don't know. It was sterile, but here was this dragon like causing all kinds of mischief, and I remember that being what made it fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, the practical effects that they mixed with the animation.
Yes.
I mean, it's a ridiculous concept. I mean, it literally is a cartoon dragon that's interacting with everybody, but they knew what they were doing. And of course, you have Don Bluth at the height of his Bluethness before he says, you know what, I'm out of here. I mean, he's about like, I think he's like 2 or 3 years before he jumped ship on Disney. And basically, you know, they have him at the height of his creative power, like in his late 30s, and he's just wrecking it. And they do this magic trick with this movie where you know it's wires, you know it's a bunch of cranes that you can't see because it's being covered up by cell animation, and you don't care because the animation is so good. And there's a cat butt.
This is Boots' floofy tail.
and the story is so well done. And quite frankly, you know, the acting is completely top notch. Every single character in Pete's Dragon is just a winner. And if you've never seen this, you have to see it because Pete's adopted family is like the scumbaggiest of all scumbag people. Oh my God. Like, look, seriously, like I give a lot of villains a pass, like, you know, Maleficent and like the Evil Queen. I'm like, they're just misunderstood. But like Cruella de Vil is like peak evil, right? And the adopted family of Pete is right underneath. I mean,
very close. Yeah.
Scumbag.
I didn't know Helen Reddy could act.
Oh, right? Ouch. Seriously, she's amazing in this movie.
Jeez, I didn't know we were going to do some slamming on Helen Reddy.
Well, I wasn't slamming her. I just didn't know. Seriously. All I knew was from "I'm Woman, Hear Me Roar." That was all I knew her from. I didn't know she was an actor too.
You weren't ready.
No,
no, Gary, no, Gary.
Oh, Lord.
All right. Anyway,
but speaking of dragons, since we said 1982 was the cutoff point, I need to point out that there is one Rankin Bass movie we haven't talked about yet, and I have the first edition printing of the book that it's based off of.
Ooh,
Flight of
yes.
Dragons.
Yes, Shaun, this is why you're here.
I forgot all about this.
The Flight of Dragons. If you've never actually seen this book, The Flight of Dragons, it is so amazing. Let me pull up one of the artwork. If they get like, I usually can find Gorbash pretty quick in this, which is like the main dragon that Peter. And of course, now that I'm on the clock, I can't find him because I'm stupid. But don't you hate it when that happens? Let me flip back to the front. Hold on, because I know he's right. Oh, there he is. Okay, I found him. Okay, so I think there's a bigger one right here that they had. But crap, now I lost it. Oh well. So I'm just going to go back to the original. There we go. So here is one of the just beautiful. Let me try to zoom in there for you.
Ooh.
So, but I mean, this artwork is just absolutely amazing. It's done by Wayne Anderson, and he does all these great, very late 60s, early 70s kind of style. And then, of course, Rankin Bass spent the last part of the 70s to develop this movie, and they combined it with another one. There was another story. It's a German story. It's like Peter and the Dragon or something like that, which is where they got the idea of taking Peter Dickinson and actually putting him in his own book. But The Flight of Dragons, if you've never seen it, absolutely amazing. And just like all Rankin Bass numbers, you're going to get a musical, you know,
you're going to get some music.
You will.
I
believe it's actually available from Warner on Demand as Blu-ray now.
Oh, good. Good.
And you can also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was moved with John Ritter, right?
Yeah, with John Ritter, not Edward James, almost Darth Vader.
David Prowse?
No. Voice.
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones plays.
And for the second time.
Yeah.
I was going to say for the second time in many weeks, Harry Morgan.
Yes.
It was in the Flight of Dragons.
Right.
Sherman T. Potter. I wonder why I remember that name.
Panel last week. Yeah.
But it's so good. Basically, the whole idea is that it's a there's this land lost in time that's losing its magic, and there are 4 wizards that represent kind of like the cardinal directions, and they want to create a land where they're never going to lose their power. But one of them, which is also the power of evil, basically gives them the finger and says, "I ain't giving up nothing," because he knows that war is coming, and industry will give him, like, the more people are in conflict, the more power he has. So they have to basically get an antecedent of this, Arthurian kind of legend to come back and help him. So that this guy from the 20th century is brought back in time in order to help them fight this wizard. It's a boss movie. It's ridiculous as hell, but you can't help but love it. John Ritter's amazing in it. Watch this movie.
Yeah, on another lighter note and switching studios, if you go to Don Bluth, you can watch the Thumbelina movie that he did, which is actually a happy little movie, and I love that movie. It's an adorable.
Go on a high note, yes.
Yes, we're going to end up playing Thumbelina.
As we're winding down a little bit, Gary, were there more on your list that we didn't get to?
The Phantom Toll Booth. Which is a fantastic 1970 live action, starts live action, goes animated, then ends.
Right.
Chuck Jones, who is an animation god.
Yes, he is. We worship at the throne of Chuck Jones.
This version of Tom and Jerry.
And if we're going to talk Pete's Dragon, then we also have to throw in one of Disney's other animation live action mixes of Bed Knobs and Broomsticks.
Oh my God, that is the best movie.
Man.
Angela Lansbury versus Nazis. How do you not love that?
Yes.
You love this movie.
Mrs. Fletcher kills the
Nazis. You haven't
Nazis.
seen this movie. You love this movie.
Absolutely. And you know what's great is that the animation section is not that long. It's basically like Mary Poppins going into the chalk painting. But like when they're under the sea and they're just doing their bibbly bobbly, it's amazing. They do such a great job. And
who doesn't sing along to Chirguna Macorum Chirgoides Sanctus Dei? And I said that all wrong, but still.
Yeah, but I can't remember how to say it either. Like I'm going like, how the hell did they say that?
I look it up on YouTube every now and again, and I sing along with it. I'm just saying.
Yep. And the last one on my list, which is also, I hate to end on this one because it's also, for me, it's always a downer. Charlotte's Web. That's a movie that just leaves me like bawling.
What about Rocket?
Magnificent.
There was a movie when I was a kid, and I don't know, maybe I imagined it. But it was like a Rockadoodle movie with the rooster.
Yeah, but that was the 80s, I think.
Was it?
Rockadoodle.
It's actually Rockadoodle. Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't imagine it.
No.
Well, now see the chicken expert Kevin is not here.
That's great.
We traded up from Kevin to Kornflake.
We did. We did.
We've had enough of you, Kevin.
Jim Campbell?
Seriously.
Kevin, I did not tell them to say this.
Shots fired. Like
she totally did tell us. But guys, so much fun. Thank you very, very much. Let's go. Like final thoughts. Did we miss anything? We could do another hour on the ones we missed, the Disney flicks from the 70s that we could go into. The Aristocats I could talk about for hours. Just because, well, except for the little racism in it. Matt.
Yes, Disney and its history of racism.
A little bit. But there's so much stuff from the 70s, and some of it is easily available today. Some of it you have to YouTube or dig up somewhere. But like Sherman was talking about, the Warner Videos on demand service, which is great. That's where speaking of ranking and best, that's where I got the Life and Adventures of Santa Claus.
Nice.
Which actually would have counted because oh my gosh, it's L. Frank Baum's Christmas Story. It's nutso.
But, that's Frank Baum for you.
Yeah, but let's go around and everybody tell everyone where you can be found on the interwebs or wherever. Denise.
So you can find me that fun little. I did it right. Look at me. I'm so cool. That fun little at layman's terms. That's a play on my last name because I'm French and we hate the English language.
And the English.
And the English. Vive la France. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm there occasionally nowadays because I'm in the middle of transferring it over to refocus on what I'm going to do with it. But if you want to check out some of my art, it's all there. You are more than welcome to. And thanks so much for having me. I mean, I know this is like my traumatic childhood movie, but it's actually one of my favorite movies. I love The Last Unicorn. So, yay.
If you're going to be traumatized correctly.
Right, exactly. Do not do Watership Down, do The Last Unicorn and have a real down.
At least it doesn't have a horse in a swamp.
Too soon, Gary. Too soon.
Gary. Oh, no.
35 years is not enough time, sir.
It's not.
Why would you do this?
Because I'm evil.
Betray you.
Sherman.
I can be found at Nerdburger358 on Pinterest, Instagram, some other stuff. And if you look for the Cranky Hamster on Facebook, that'll usually be me.
And Kornflake.
Okay, well, you can find me every week on the Flopcast. We're at flopcast.net, facebook.com/flopcast. And you find me, but also a little bit of Kevin on an album I recently released. So you can check out my music at Kornflake and Jacob, all is one word, at kornflakeandjacob.bandcamp.com, where I've released the album I Don't Know What You're Talking About. Thank you. So this is my first classics track panel, and I can't thank you enough for having me. And it was such a treat to go back and watch the Last Unicorn and to see all the things that I missed, including that "Anyway I Love You" song, which I knew I had heard somewhere recently. It was the Orville, and with
What?
Season 2, episode 11. There is a rendition of "Anyway I Love You," and I didn't know that was in The Last Unicorn, so I saw it in the Orville, and then I saw it in The Last Unicorn last night. I'm like, oh, it's from the Orville. But things in present day kind of take me back to watching the stuff from the 70s that I was like way too young to understand or appreciate when I was little, and so to come back through tracks like this is a real treat for me.
Well, as everyone on the panel can confirm, once you do one, you've got like 87 more that you have to
seriously, check your email, Kornflake. You're going to have like a list, okay?
You're stuck with us now.
You all are so great. Thank you so much.
The first one's free. Now
the first one is free. I remember Shaun's first panel back when he was knee-high to a grasshopper.
Do you actually remember? What was my first panel with you guys?
I think it was the 1982 panel.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that 1982 panel was insane.
I still wish someone had recorded that.
I know. But we did a pretty good
job. That's why we're doing these every
Yeah.
single week. Now people can't say, hey, do we have a recording of that? Yes.
And that's true.
We
And
do.
we did do a version of it for Pop Pop Con Con this past summer. So we do have a version of the 1982 panel, but it's still, as much as I love my own 1982 panel, it still wasn't as cool as the original that we did, umpteen years ago. But yeah, guys, if you ever want to follow me, you can do so right over there. Numa Z is pretty much all of my stuff. You can also follow my wife and I at Popcycled. We have our own Twitch channel, so twitch.tv/Popcycled, and you can watch us make art. And starting next week, we're actually doing something a little interesting, which is we've come up with this interesting idea where we're going to talk about things that you probably missed during social studies / civics class, because nobody from the 8th grade to the 10th grade is paying attention to anything about government because hormones. And we all need to know a little bit more about government. So we're basically having our own social studies class that'll be every week, and we're calling it Constitution Check.
Cool.
And one of the things that we're doing in there is we're also going to do a citizenship test. So every week we're going to have a little bit of a topic of the week. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, these are things that every citizen should know. And then we'll talk about some news of the week as well. So check that out. That's going to be every Tuesday. So you can see that. And I did have one suggestion. Joe, you had asked if we had one suggestion that people should check out. It's a 4-minute short. It introduced me to one of my favorite animators of all time, Bill Plimpton. And it is in the 70s, so it does count. And it's Lucas, the Ear of Corn.
Oh,
All right. If you've never seen it, it is a wacky, freakish little animated short. But it will take you down a Bill Plimpton a rabbit hole. And the beautiful part about that is eventually it'll get to your face, where
Oh God, that's so good.
it is the best one he's ever done. And he's tried to come close to it, but he's never quite reached that epicness for me. But he almost won an Academy Award that year for it. But I wish he had. He was robbed. But yes, go check that out. 4 minutes. You'll love Lucas, the Ear of Corn, and then just go down the Bill Plimpton catalog.
you remember in art school when we had to animate the little flour sack?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why couldn't we animate an ear of corn, man? Why couldn't we,
right?
why couldn't we be cool like that? I'm just saying.
It's true.
And Gary Mitchell.
You can find me here where you found me tonight, because I do this every week with him. You can find me here on the Twitters. And my last suggestion, I'm going to back Shaun's play on Bill Plimpton. I love him. I found him, I think, on Liquid Television.
Yeah.
Play some of his stuff.
Plimpton.
But my suggestion, since we did the cutoff of 1983, that we didn't talk about heavy metal.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we got
That
it.
movie is bonkers.
Very bonkers.
We'll get to that.
all the sword play and evil rocks and bare breasts
cocaine
you ever wanted. Yeah, and cocaine. You're flying, man. You fly like you're stoned, but you don't. Your hands aren't stoned.
That movie, man.
But no Heavy Metal 2000.
No. Watch the Acid Trip. Watch the Acid Trip.
Right. Yes.
70s version. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the yeah. Anyway.
I like the gesture.
Those were some gestures.
And one of the best soundtracks in movie history.
It's true.
Yes, indeed. So, guys, thank you very, very much. We will see you next week. Our topic next week, Gary, is... I don't remember either. Okay, so...
Give me 2 seconds.
I'm here for it. I know I'm on it. I just don't remember what it was.
Let's see. Next week is... Yes. Next week is the 4th. So it's...
You're killing us.
Return to Oz.
Oh,
yes! Oz next week.
Don't balk at that proposition.
Yes. Wheelers, Toto, and TikTok. Return to Oz 35th Oziversary.
Yes. So, in the next week, we suggest everybody go to the Disney Plus and watch it. And then we will come here and decompress after you've watched
Talk about childhood trauma.
Yeah. After you see Mom be all go, run out the room.
Hey, any movie that opens up with your child protagonist getting an electroshock treatment.
Sure.
Right.
It's a good time.
Film.
Yeah.
So speaking of electroshock treatments, Gary, join us next week when Gary will say...
Toto her. I barely know her.
Nope.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for coming to another Classic Track Quarantine panel. We will see you next week. We love you guys. Stay safe. We will talk to you soon.